Hello, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining this evening's telephone town hall with Congressman Johnny Olszewski. My name is Robin, and I'll be moderating the call this evening. This is an interactive call, and we'll be taking as many questions as we possibly can tonight. To ask the Congressman a question, please press *3 on your telephone keypad now. You may also sign up for our newsletter by pressing *6 at any time during the call. Again, if you'd like to ask a question, press *3 now or press *6 to subscribe to the Congressman's e-newsletter. And now, without further delay, I'd like to turn the call over to Congressman Johnny Olszewski. Congressman, you are live and the floor is yours, sir.
Thanks so much, Robin, and good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. It is an honor to be your new congressman. It's an honor to welcome you to my first virtual town hall. We are coming to you live from our recently opened district office here in Towson. I've had the privilege to represent many of you at both the state and local level for several years. Others are new constituents. So for those whom I've represented before, it's very important to me that my office be connected to the people and communities we serve, to be open, to be accessible, to be transparent about our work. And I'm grateful for this opportunity to connect with you directly tonight. I've only been in Congress for a few weeks, but we have already heard from thousands of you about the new administration and their actions as they implement drastic changes to our system of government. We've heard your confusion, we've heard your worry, we've heard your outrage. And it's clear that our civil service is now under direct attack. Maryland is home to more than 140,000 federal civilian employees. Our district here in Maryland 2nd includes over 22,000 of those employees. And so to those of you who are on this call, who have dedicated your lives and careers to our government, please first know that I thank you for your service and know that I stand with you in this moment. You all have real families to whom you're responsible for providing. You are also providing those critical services that make our lives better. You are ensuring that Social Security checks go out on time. You're making sure that veterans get the care they deserve and that our seniors get the benefits they need and that our communities are safe. The work that you do isn't just a job, it's a calling. That's why I rallied with some of you outside of the USAID building and in front of the Social Security headquarters in recent days as the president and DOJ has threatened your livelihoods and the critical missions you provide. Many of you on the line have called my office or sent me an email sharing how scared you are. And some of you have accepted my invitation to share real life experiences through our website. I've been touched by your stories. We've heard from a young mother who was recently diagnosed with cancer. She's about to start chemo and radiation, and her husband works for the federal government. She's terrified she's going to lose her health insurance. I heard from the family of a U.S. Army vet who's finally retiring after more than 20 years of service to our nation. They noticed that federal workers are the ones who greeted them at every new installation, who enrolled their children in support services, and who will process those well-deserved and well-earned retirement benefits. I spoke to a woman outside of Social Security who was literally in tears, not only at the prospect of losing her job, but the disintegration of our democracy. I've heard not just from employees on the front lines, but also constituents who are worried about losing those vital services provided by these federal workers, including the government benefits they are entitled to, like Social Security and Medicare. Some of you also rely on community nonprofits that have been affected by an illegal federal funding freeze. I recently attended an event to kick off free tax preparation services for local residents. And that director told me she was unable to access IRS grant fundings to keep them operating. You're rightly worried about the national security impacts of the Trump administration's freeze on humanitarian assistance and diplomatic programs. And we all rightly fear what comes next. The Department of Education, Medicare, the Pentagon. Last week, more than 300 staffers at the National Nuclear Security Administration were fired. This is the agency that oversees the U.S. nuclear stockpile. I'll say it again. The people who oversee our national nuclear stockpile were fired for no reason. Now, President Trump realized this was a bad idea, but it highlights the recklessness of these decisions. Making matters worse, his administration is struggling to rehire those workers because they no longer have access to government emails. And it assumes that workers would even want to come back under present circumstances. That's what happens when we see careless, shoot from the hip leadership. These are scary times, but we can and we must rise above our fear with level heads, clear thinking, and communication that is open. That's why we're hosting tonight's town hall, and I'll take this opportunity to remind you to press *3 if you want to ask a question at any point later tonight. I come at this work from the unique perspective of a former county executive. I have balanced multi-billion-dollar budgets. I believe in and have done efficiency and waste reduction work. In fact, I welcome that conversation at the federal level. But I also believe in our Constitution. I believe in our democratic systems, and I believe in the rule of law. The administration, or any administration, cannot unilaterally shutter government agencies created by Congress. They can't provide unfettered access to sensitive Treasury payment information with no transparency and no guardrails. They can't offer employee buyouts with money that hasn't been appropriated. And if DOJ were truly concerned about corruption, they wouldn't have begun their work by firing our nation's watchdogs, our inspectors general, and having done so against the legal requirements of giving notice and a specific reason for the termination. You know, our U.S. Constitution gives Congress the power of the purse for a reason. It's a critical check on executive abuses, and it was a reflection of our founding fathers' desire to prevent authoritarian abuses. That's why we're using every tool that we have to push back and advance policies that protect these long-established democratic norms. I've signed on to letters and legislation. We've also seen that litigation can be effective, including lawsuits filed by the state of Maryland and the city of Baltimore. And we also have the upcoming budget negotiations. But nothing is stronger than our collective voices and votes. In November, the American public sent elected leaders to Washington with one single mandate: to lower costs. We're now, sadly, 45 days into this congressional session with no action taken. While this administration is focused on dismantling the lifelines that Americans depend on, we have not taken a single vote in Congress to lower costs for families. In fact, the actions we've seen make it even harder for struggling Americans to make ends meet. So I will continue to beat this drum until our congressional leadership brings forward bills that help families at the grocery store and the gas pumps. This is what we were elected to do. I'm excited to share that we were joined tonight by two very special guests. First, we have my colleague, Congressman Jamie Raskin, who's been on the front lines of defending democracy both here in Maryland, but also throughout our country and the world. In this 119th Congress, in recognition of this work, his colleagues, including myself, elected him ranking member of the House Judiciary Committee. I was lucky to serve alongside him in the Maryland General Assembly, and it's an honor to serve alongside him in the House of Representatives. Jamie, thank you so much for joining us. I know you have other obligations tonight and really appreciate you carving time to be with us. I'd like to open it up and see if you're willing to say a few words.
Of course, and the pleasure, the honor are all mine, Johnny O. And you have arrived just in the nick of time with your extraordinary blend of local, county, state, and federal experience now. And we need you very much in this fight, and it has been an honor to get to work with you already in trying to defend the Constitution and the rule of law in public programs. Look, this is a full-blown assault on our constitutional order, and it's an attack on Congress's power to set agencies up. I mean, Congress created NIH. Congress created the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Congress created the National Weather Service and the inspectors general and so on. Elon Musk is getting rid of federal departments that he has no power to get rid of. I mean, Donald Trump himself could not wave a magic wand and disappear the NIH or NOAA or the CFPB. I don't know why one would want to. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau has been saving tens of billions of dollars for American consumers. It limited by regulation bank overdraft fees to $5. People were getting charged $30 or $40 for that. It limited credit card late fees to $8. People were getting socked with $40 or $50 late fees from credit card companies. So, look, the pretense here is that Elon Musk has been set loose to dismantle the government in search of waste, fraud, and abuse. That's not what they're looking for. Johnny O, you've been a county executive. You know how you go after waste, fraud, and abuse. It is painstaking work by lots of people to understand if money is being taken away. Elon Musk's teams are not going in with forensic accountants and auditors. They're going in with a bunch of Silicon Valley 20-something computer hackers. They're seizing our private data, which is why the courts have been intervening to stop that at the Department of Treasury, to say this could be the greatest security breach in American history, taking everybody's private data. But they're certainly not in search of stopping corruption. On the contrary, they are instruments and agents of corruption. The first thing they did was to get rid of 17 inspectors general who are the real corruption fighters who saved us $91 billion last year. Elon Musk hasn't saved us $91 in waste, fraud, and abuse. All they're doing is engaging in indiscriminate mass layoffs of people like air traffic controllers and forest service firefighters. And as you were saying, nuclear safety inspectors, food and drug safety inspectors, including people working on the bird flu unit. I mean, all they're doing is getting these large lists of employees and sacking them. That's not going to put a remote dent into the deficit, especially since the reason they're doing this is to lay the groundwork for increasing the debt ceiling by $4 trillion so they can engage in the most massive tax cut in American history to the same wealthy corporations and individuals who got it last time. So look, we are standing up for congressional power to pass programs and to appropriate money. An Appropriations Act is a federal law, just like the law that says you can't violently assault federal officers. We're going to defend the civil service and our professional workers in government who make the government go. We're going to defend the beneficiaries of Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, NIH, the National Weather Service, which is all of us because we get our weather information for free because of NOAA, which is in my district in Montgomery County. They want to privatize it, so everybody's going to have to pay 10 or 15 bucks a month in order to get the weather. We are going to defend our constitutional order, our system of government. You know, what I've been reading, and people from Silicon Valley have been getting in touch with me, these are people who know Elon Musk well. And he's part of a group including Peter Thiel and a whole bunch of Silicon Valley billionaires who have come to the conclusion that we don't need American democracy anymore. Democracy, they say, is obsolete. So check out this guy, Curtis Yarvin, who is their intellectual hero. He says it is time for us to move to a techno-monarchy. We need somebody who can run our government like a CEO. And he said we shouldn't be afraid of the word dictator, because a dictator is just like a CEO, just the way that Elon Musk has run his corporation, Tesla, which incidentally is experiencing 60 or 70% drop in its stock values in Europe. Just like he runs that, he can run the government this way. And you know that Elon Musk was not born in the United States. He was born in South Africa. He was Canadian before he came over to America as a student, dropped out of school, worked here illegally as an undocumented person, which has not stopped him from getting aboard, the campaign to deport 12 million people in the country. But in any event, they think that he can basically become the CEO of the country, which is why he keeps showing up in the Oval Office and kind of lording it over Donald Trump. It's a very dangerous situation we're in, and we are going to use litigation, legislation, mass protests, mass organizing and education to make sure that we hang tough for democracy. And I could not be happier that your district has sent Johnny Olszewski to Washington to fight for everything that we believe in. And I yield back to you, Johnny O.
Thank you again, Congressman. Again, I know you've got a busy night, but if you have time for a question or two before you go, maybe we can do that.
Yes,
and we can thank you for Great. Rob, I'm going to open it up for one or two here. Great.
Absolutely. My pleasure, sir. Our first question comes from Annie. Annie, you're live on the call. Please go ahead and ask your question, Annie.
Vice President Vance made these off the wall, crazy as usual comments about the judicial branch, saying that, judges aren't allowed to control executive power. I mean, where does that come from? It's crazy. I'd just like your reaction, please.
Well, of course, the Supreme Court in Marbury versus Madison said that all branches of the government and the states are bound by the Constitution under the Supremacy Clause, and the Supreme Court can strike down laws. And of course, J.D. Vance knows that. They brought dozens and dozens of lawsuits against the Biden administration to try to strike down everything from climate legislation to college student loan forgiveness. They were claiming that the president was engaged in illegal action. So this is a newfound faith on their part. And thank you for raising J.D. Vance, because most recently he embarrassed the country and disgraced himself by going over to Munich, where our Democratic allies are having a security conference about what's taking place with Russia and China, Russia's brutal fascist invasion of Ukraine, and what China is threatening Taiwan and Hong Kong and the Tibetans with, and so on. And he went over there to say, the problem is not China and it's not Russia. The big problem is you in Europe. Why? Because they are not sufficiently embracing the far-right extremist neo-fascist party, which Elon Musk had gone over to endorse, the Alternative for Deutschland, AfD, and the Vice President of the United States met with them, violating a pact and a taboo in German politics, which is, since World War II, nobody meets with or engages in parliamentary coalition with extremist parties in order to prevent the return of fascism. And J.D. Vance just broke that taboo in order to lecture our allies about free speech right after he demanded the firing of a Wall Street Journal reporter who had the audacity to report the truth about one of Elon Musk's midnight juvenile crew members who had been posting all kinds of racist stuff online, including that he wanted to see both Gaza and Israel sink into the sea, that he wanted to legitimize Indian hate, and that he was a racist long before it was cool. So she wrote that article, and instead of saying something about what the underlying attack was by this young man, the racist anti-Semitic attack, instead he says the problem was the Wall Street Journal and they should fire the reporter. And this is at the same time that President Trump is ordering that the Associated Press not be allowed to attend various functions at the White House. They're getting kicked out of their office at the White House. Why? Because they continue to call the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of Mexico.
Thank you, Congressman. Our next caller is Karen from Finksburg. Karen, please go ahead and ask your question.
Yes, good evening. I was interested in knowing exactly what can you all do. It feels like, the Senate and the Congress are just being bullied by President Trump and Elon Musk. And it just feels like there's nothing y'all can do, because they're just sitting on their heels because they're scared to death of these people. And I am worried about the unions in this country. I'm worried about the Social Security. My husband's retired, former union representative for IBW 26. We're just very concerned, and I'm just like to have an idea. I understand all of us just trying to be together, but can our courts actually hold up?
Karen, thank you for that excellent question. Thank you for your service at the IBEW and the union movement. Look, first of all, we are winning in court. We've won more than a dozen temporary restraining orders and preliminary injunctions. We won on the assault on our private data at the Department of Treasury. We won on their blatantly unconstitutional birthright citizenship executive order, which purported to strip 8 or 9 million people of their citizenship because who their parents or their grandparents were. We are winning in the FBI case. You know, they asked for a roundup of 6,000 FBI agents with all of their private information if they had worked on the January 6th case. That is, if they did their job, just like they sacked a dozen assistant U.S. attorneys in D.C. for participating in the prosecution of people who violently assaulted our officers, smashing them over the head with steel pipes, flag poles from Confederate battle flags and so on. Well, we're winning in those cases, but your point is well taken because, I think Trump and Musk believe when all these cases make their way up to the U.S. Supreme Court, at that point, this court, which has been packed and stacked and gerrymandered by Donald Trump in order to overturn Roe versus Wade, will come back to work for him again the way it did in the presidential immunity case, where they just pulled a rabbit out of a hat and said that the President of the United States can engage in felony crimes without prosecution if it's under the general auspices of the core functions of his office. So, yes, we should be worried about that. But in the meantime, we are winning, and we're going to win in the district courts, so we're going to win in the appeals courts, and we're going to slow the whole thing down. And as Johnny Olszewski says, the great thing about our constitutional system, there's always another election around the corner. And you're right, Karen, one party has control of the House, the White House, and the Senate, as well as the Supreme Court. 2026 is an opportunity for us to cut that reign of terror in half. But I'm seeing tremendous popular organizing and mobilization, and they're losing a lot of the people who were once on their side. The farmers are outraged. I mean, they pulled the plug on $2 billion worth of contracts that farmers in America have to raise food and sell food to the government to go to starving people in Africa and Asia and other parts of the world. So every enemy they make becomes a friend to the movement to defend democracy and freedom.
Thank you so much, Congressman. Again, folks, I want to remind you, if you have a question, please press *3 on your telephone keypad now, and to sign up for the Congressman's e-newsletter, that's *6 at any time during this call. Congressman, I'm going to hand the call back to you.
Yeah, thanks again. And that actually might be a good opportunity to let folks know about our other special guests tonight, just to weigh in. And Congressman Raskin, thank you again so much for joining us tonight. It was great to have your voice and your leadership on these critical issues. I will say that just sort of jumping on top of the comments, the remarks from the Vice President, I think were incredibly dangerous. And for me, it will be a bright red line that will be crossed, particularly if these decisions are upheld ultimately by a Supreme Court that has already been packed by the current administration. If those decisions were ruled and the administration ignores them. I mean, we have intentionally created a system of checks and balances where judges are independent arbiters of what is legal and what is constitutional. I think it's clear to me that a lot of these actions are illegal and unconstitutional, but having courts affirm that really requires that the executive branch heed that action and take it. And I think it would be a bright red line to not cross. And again, just reinforcing, we do have an all of the above strategy: litigation, legislation, public opinion rallying. And I know a lot of this work is being done centered around this Project 2025. But as Congressman Raskin was saying, there is Project 2026 on the horizon. And this was first coined by leader Hakeem Jeffries. But really, the response has to be at the ballot box and sending a message that these actions are not okay and not acceptable. So on that litigation strategy, we are also grateful tonight to be joined by Megan Uzzell, who is the Director of Impact and External Affairs at Democracy Forward, which is a Washington-based nonprofit organization that uses litigation to expose abuses of power and pushback. They are leading the court-based strategy against the Trump administration, and just last week filed an emergency suit on behalf of the city of Baltimore, asking the courts to stop Russ Vought from unilaterally defunding the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which, as Congressman Raskin mentioned, has saved billions of dollars for American citizens. Megan previously served as 8 years as Associate Deputy Secretary at the Department of Labor. Megan, thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to hearing about the important work Democracy Forward is doing on behalf of the American public. Can you say a few words before we open the floor back up for more questions.
Sure. Thank you very much for having me here tonight. I feel very lucky to spend this time with the constituents of the 2nd District of Maryland. And thank you and Congressman Raskin. I always learn something new every time I listen to you both speak, so consider myself very lucky to be here tonight. In Democracy Forward, almost a year ago, started working with organizations across civil society, I think bound and determined that we would be more organized, more resourceful, and more united should we be in a position of needing to take legal action against an anti-democratic federal administration. And that, unfortunately, is the situation we find ourselves in. But I'm thrilled that it is not just Democracy Forward, it is us working across a number of organizations, Protect Democracy, ACLU, Public Citizen, and others with which I'm certain you're quite familiar. And I'd like to thank cities like the City of Baltimore, organizations like the American Public Health Association, the National Council of Nonprofits, and our allies in the labor movement for being bold and brave and stepping out and challenging some of the unlawful actions we've seen from the executive branch. And then I'd just like to take a moment of privilege, if I'm able to, and thank the members of the civil workforce, the federal employees that I know live in the 2nd District and have done so much and given so much of themselves so that people in our communities and those across the country can really benefit. And so thank you for your service, and know that Democracy Forward, our allies, and our allies and your Congressman and Congressman Raskin and others will continue the fight.
Thank you so much, Megan. We've got another question. We've got Paulette from Northeast Baltimore City. Paulette, you are live on the call. Please go ahead and ask your question. Hi, Paulette, you're live. Please go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and ask the question on behalf of Paulette. Paulette's question. Well, Paulette, are you there?
Yes, I am. Yeah, hello?
Please go
Hey,
ahead.
Paulette.
I just wanted to know if I will be getting my retirement, civil service retirement next month.
Yeah, good question. Look, Social Security and retirement is something that you've worked your entire life for. It provides important benefits to you and to others who have paid into the system. I think what is concerning to me is we've seen just recently the longstanding civil servant leading Social Security had to resign because Elon Musk and the Doge team was asking for access to really sensitive data. There's been a new proposal put out by the Republican House leadership relative to the budget that has instructed hundreds of billions of dollars of cuts to both Social Security and to healthcare. And that would be to fund tax cuts that have been shown to disproportionately benefit the ultra wealthy. And so I think as things stand today, yes, you should be getting your benefits. My concern is whether it's a retirement check or a Social Security check, how long that might take. You look at a place like Social Security, it's probably the most efficient, large-scale insurance company in the world. Less than 1% of its costs go towards administration. So the vast majority of what's going out are benefits. And so having fewer people will make it harder to get those benefits out. And certainly targeting hundreds of millions of dollars of cuts are going to have impact. But I think you are good at this point, but this is why we're pushing back so hard. And if for any reason you're not, we'll partner with people like Megan to make sure that we're filing litigation to make sure those hard-earned and deserved and earned benefits are in fact received. If you or anyone on this call experience any trouble with a benefit or a retirement payment, though, please, I would urge you to contact our office so that we can fight on your behalf.
Thank you so much, Congressman. Our next caller is Valerie from Woodstock. Valerie, you are live on the call. Please go ahead and ask your question, Valerie.
Yes, hi, good afternoon. My question kind of piggybacked off of, I believe someone asked, are we really able to do anything? I've been hearing about the judges getting involved, and I wanted to know, why is everything a temporary stop Like, what's the next step to try to make some of the? I'm trying to figure out why is it that it's either legal or not legal what he's doing. I work at OPM with people's retirement benefits, and the letters that we're getting, the fork in the road emails, they're stressful, they're threatening. It's not a thing where it's just take an early buyout and benefit from some extra months of pay. It's a threat. Either take this, we're going to offer this now. You believe it, you'll see it when you get it if it happens. And if you don't take it, we're just working on how to take your job away later anyway. So you can take the stairs or you can take the window is what we're getting. And it was stopped for, a weekend? And now it seems he's back to business as usual. And I was just curious as to what are the temporary stops doing if they're not going to come back and say, yes, it's illegal. Congress did not approve this. That's my question.
Yeah, well, I'll start just by saying thank you for your service to this country and to your fellow citizens. It's so critical what you do. This sort of also goes back to like the Schedule F that they're trying to implement that will take away some of your rights and privileges as an employee. You still have all of those civil service protections. But I think I want to sort of pass this to Megan for a little bit to talk a little bit about the differences in the temporary stops from the courts versus what the long-term approach might be here.
Sure. Thank you very much, Congressman, and thank you for your service to OPM and to our nation. As someone that grew up in a family of public servants, I just can't thank you enough for what you are doing and under such tough conditions these days to you and your colleagues. I think when we're thinking about and we're hearing about whether there's the court is saying something is can be stopped temporarily, whether the court is doesn't rule in their favor in that particular regard. I think we need to think about there are just legal standards that have to be met when we're seeking different remedy and different recourse from the court. I think what's important to remember is that doesn't necessarily change the underlying matter. Like, we still believe that what is being advanced in the fork in the road offer, so to say, what you described, take the stairs or take the window, that is raises significant legal questions. It raises significant questions about whether those are the wise choices, appropriate choices that should be given. And we're grateful for the leadership of Congress and members like the congressman from this particular district, from the 2nd District, and the leadership that he and Mr. Raskin are playing in raising important questions. And we're not going to give up, just because we're in the position of not getting, the extended temporary restraining order to put an immediate pause in it. We encourage you to go look at civilservicestrong.org. If you have not yet, that's civilservicestrong.org. While we continue to pursue the litigation and the legal challenges across a range of issues and claims in court, there's a number of resources that we and our partner organizations are seeking to provide. We have partnered with labor unions and with other organizations to try to consolidate so you don't have to go to a bunch of different websites in order to be able to get the resources. But there's lots of really good, important resources that are available there. So we will continue, despite what may look like an adverse ruling or a court ruling that wasn't necessarily what we desired. We are going to continue to see what recourse we can from the courts, and we're not backing down from these issues in the defense of the civil service.
Thanks so much, Megan. Earlier in the call, I had mentioned that this is an interactive call. There is another feature in this call. We have a poll question for you this evening. Our question is, do you think Elon Musk and Doge employees should have access to your Social Security number and bank information with no vetting or oversight? To answer this question, this poll question, please press yes. For number 1 is yes. Number 2, if your answer is no. And number 3 on your telephone keypad if you were unsure. And I will repeat that question for you. The question is, Do you think Elon Musk and Doge employees should have access to your Social Security number and your bank information with no vetting or oversight? Please press the number 1 on your telephone keypad if you think that it is a yes for you. Number 2, if this is a no for you. And number 3, if you are uncertain. And we do appreciate your participation. And again, I want to remind you, if you have a question, please press *3 on your telephone keypad. And if you would like to subscribe to the Congressman's e-newsletter, please press *6. Our next question comes from Jacqueline of Lutherville, Timonium. Jacqueline, you are live on the call. Please go ahead and ask your question, Jacqueline.
Sure. I feel like this is abuse of power by this president. And I also wanted to know why he can use the EO. I know what the Constitution says, but why can't congressional leaders stop his use of the EO? I know we didn't elect a dictator. We elect a president. And I don't understand why our congressional leaders can't put a stop to that some way, the abuse of power, especially the EO. I don't know what the heck this is going on. I don't know how he can override the Congress. We put these laws in place. He didn't. We did. So why isn't us that making the laws decisions? I mean, this is unbelievable. And this is at the very heart of the democracy and falling. I don't want a dictator. I want a president that represents me. He's not representing me. He's not representing anybody on this call. And I will say this, that poll idea is a great idea because I asked a lot more questions and you will get the real answer from anybody on this call. I don't know how many are on this call, but I was on Van Holden's call last week, and there were 17,000 people on that call. If they did polling, they would know and have that direct quote to the congressional leaders that can make a difference, but they're not. I know impeachment, I've seen it used over time and time in the last couple of years, but it doesn't mean anything anymore. Why not? And why aren't we getting the answers we want now, not after we have to go to the courts? That's crazy, and I don't know. I have to say, I have a son with significant disabilities. Right now in Maryland, I feel like there's a trickle-down effect. Right down in Maryland, our governor is cutting our DD budget by $200 million. But that was $200 million for DDA funding. My son's funded under state funding only funding. He's totally cut off his funding, and he's total care. Give me an answer to that.
Yeah, thank you so much for your question. And I think the concerns sort of really amplify what we're hearing from a lot of people. We have this system of checks and balances for a reason. I taught American government in a local high school, public school in Baltimore County before I was elected to office. And both President Trump and Elon Musk would be failing my class right now. They both need to come back to my class and learn about the structures and functions of government. You know, their actions where they are trying to use executive order as some way to override existing law is problematic, as we're already hearing, for our federal workers. It's problematic for the millions of Americans who rely on the services. And it's really in direct defiance of our United States Constitution. This is defying the will of our founding fathers, who really intentionally and I think thoughtfully created 3 separate and equal branches of government to prevent a monarchy, to prevent a dictatorship. Unfortunately, what I will say is, the president has full control of not just the White House, but also Republicans are in control of both the U.S. Senate and the Congress. So there are tools at his disposal. The Congress to date has not stepped forward to take any action. There is legislation out there that I've co-sponsored that would prevent these abuses about access to data. It would require that this work be transparent, that there'd be freedom of information on all the work of Doge. That could be bipartisan. That could be supported by Republican members of the House. Unfortunately, to date, that has not been the case. But, my point is, if you want to dismantle an agency, even though I might personally disagree with it, the president has the tools at his disposal. He has a majority, as I said, in the House and Senate. He could further his agenda in a constitutional manner, in a manner that's consistent with our system of checks and balances. Again, I think as people are unfortunately feeling this pain, the farmers across this country, who are the ones actually providing that food for other countries, the research institutions, Johns Hopkins has taken a huge hit from federal research funding cuts, but so has the University of Alabama. Actually has gotten more money than Johns Hopkins, I believe. I mean, we're now seeing individuals and families and organizations that, especially in these more conservative states or states that are electing Republican representatives, are starting to see the impact. So it's my hope that Congress will step up and take a stand against these clearly illegal and unconstitutional actions. If they don't, we have to rely on the court system as the other check on abuses, because they are there. Judges are meant to be independent. They are meant to be able to withstand the whims of a popular election and not be afraid of what a president might say or do about them. And then, it's on us as the public and as voters to, again, I think in the next cycle, register our displeasure with the actions so that message is heard loud and clear. But I think the frustration is real. We're going to keep doing all that we can to make sure we push back against it.
Thank you, Congressman. Our next caller is Amanda. Amanda, you are live on the call with the Congressman. Please go ahead and ask your question, Amanda. Amanda, you are live on the call. Please go ahead and ask your question. All right, let's move to Katie. Katie, you're live on the call. Please go ahead, Katie. Katie, you're live on the call with the Congressman. Please go ahead and ask your question.
Thank you, first of all, for taking the time to field our questions and listen to our concerns. I'm a single mother with a son who's about to go off to college. I work actually for Johns Hopkins in the School of Public Health, so I'm daily seeing direct impact to faculty, staff, students in the school because of what's happening in this administration. My question, most of the time I'm outraged, I'm terrified, I'm paralyzed with just feeling like I'm helpless. So I guess my question is, what are things that we, the people who have limited time, limited resources, what can we do to mobilize and fight back and not feel so helpless while we're living this current nightmare?
Yeah, and thanks for joining us tonight. I'm sorry to hear that you're going through this, just like so many others are. I would say continue to encourage the offices of those who are with you to let us know that we're, encouraging us in that work. But I think also what I'm hearing is very effective is for those other representatives that may not agree with the positions I have about the nature of what President Trump and Elon Musk and Doge is doing and its impact on families and communities and organizations. I think they need to hear these stories. I think that those who can make a difference are my colleagues across the aisle in Congress. They have a very slim majority of just 3 votes, and we can pass legislation in the United States House of Representatives or stop legislation. Can make a big difference. And so I think that's super important. But then also we have to organize and prepare for 2026, because I think that is really the first chance where, as a nation, we will hear, the House of Representatives was intentionally structured in a way where the will of the public is registered every 2 years. It's meant to be an expression of the sentiment of where the American people are. And so I think in the short term, being there for your family and caring for your friends and neighbors is the most important thing you can do. But beyond that, I think have those circles where you then turn to calling offices of those who represent you and also those who take different opinions. So they hear how these actions, how these cuts are really impacting real Americans and need to be stopped.
Thank you, Congressman. Just a bit ago, we asked a poll question, and we truly appreciate your response. We do have another poll question for our listeners. Our second poll question: are you concerned about the recent proposal released by the House Republican leadership to cut benefits like Medicare and Social Security to help pay for the tax cuts for the ultra wealthy? And I will repeat the question. Are you concerned about the recent proposal released by House Republican leadership to cut benefits like Medicare and Social Security to help pay for tax cuts for the ultra wealthy. Please press 1 for yes, you are concerned, 2 for no, you are not concerned. We're going to go to our next caller. We've got Geraldine. Sorry. Got Geraldine, and I'm not able to pick her up. So let's go ahead with Amanda. Amanda, you are live on the call with the Congressman. Please go ahead and ask your question. Amanda, you are live on the call. Please go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello?
Please go ahead.
Oh, great. Thank you. I am concerned about Elon Musk having access to my personal data, all the data that the U.S. government has. I'm concerned about a lot of things, of course, but this kind of ties in with what one of the other callers talked about earlier. First of all, I feel like he should be arrested. I don't understand how he has access to all of our data and is gaining it. And I think there's a chance he could be using it to train for AI on that at some point. So I really feel like it's a nefarious use. But what can we do when we live in a district where we have people who are pretty, blue district, representatives and senators who feel the way we do? I'm showing up, I'm calling, what else can I do, and what can you do to help us prevent these data leaks, in advance of 2026 elections and things like that? I mean, these breaches are happening, it seems like daily now. So I'll listen. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you for the question. Megan, this might be a good one to pass to you if you want to talk a little bit about litigation strategy around some of this data access and the efforts of an organization that's not vetted, there's no security clearances, et cetera.
Sure. Thank you for raising that question. It's such an important issue and one that we are very concerned about too. Just last night, Democracy Forward, on behalf of a Center for Taxpayer Rights, small businesses through the organization Main Street Alliance, and the National Federation of Federal Employees and the Communication Workers of America filed a lawsuit to try to stop DOJ from accessing confidential and sensitive taxpayer and business data from the IRS. In that particular legal challenge, we allege that the unfettered access without regard to the statutory privacy protections, and I should say the IRS has a fair number of privacy protections that have been statutorily put in place because of the sensitive nature of that information, means that DOJ would have access to confidential business information, bank account information, social security numbers, individuals' financial well-being, tax records belonging to Mr. Musk's business competitors, something that truly no other business owner on the planet has access to, and something we're particularly concerned about. The administration has expressed a significant interest in data about those who have taken the child tax credit. That information is information that there are definitely statutory protections that are put in place, and we're seeking a court order to hold the administration accountable to abiding by those restrictions. It's not just the IRS, as we've discussed, CFPB, Department of Labor, HHS, we've seen it at USAID. And this particular administration is intent on trying to get as much access to as much of the data as possible. And organizations, ours and partner organizations across civil society, are going to use the courts to try to block that unfettered and unlawful access. And in the meantime, while we are using the courts, we're very appreciative and have taken note of a number of members in Congress that are also seeking information about the types of access and data protections and privacy. So we thank them for using their authorities to try to get the attention of the administration as well. And it's important that you all use your voices in this too. I'll just note that one of the things that we have found particularly compelling, and it is what is driving our team, is when people are sharing their stories of how these actions are impacting them. So if it has to do with concerns about data privacy, or if it's that federal funding for essential services have been frozen, I would just ask you, in addition to providing that information to your congressman through the ways he has shared, he has available on democracy2025.org. That's democracy2025.org. We have a portal where you can share information about services that still have federal funding frozen. And I would encourage you to utilize that and to email us at democracy2025@democracyforward.org. And I'll make sure that these resources are available to you all after. It helps us to be able to hear the stories and to be able to share them. So thank you.
Yeah, and I'll just double down on that. We're also collecting stories. And so for those of you who have stories you're comfortable sharing, please contact our office and let us know what you are experiencing so that we can help amplify. Unfortunately, our letters asking questions have largely been ignored. But in addition to the work that Megan is doing, we are also co-sponsoring legislation that does things, as I said earlier, like making sure DOJ complies with transparency laws like FOIA, because we believe the public deserves and needs to know what's going on. We have co-sponsored legislation to protect Americans' private data from people with conflicts of interest and insufficient security clearance. We are trying to protect our federal employees by blocking the implementation of Schedule F, which would reclassify tens of thousands of federal positions into a new category without those protections that are the foundation of a civil service, which, by the way, was created in response to corruption in government. And so, again, under no illusions that we will get this done easily under Republican majorities, but as we continue to support these court cases, as we tell the stories, as we write letters, we're going to keep pushing until we get the support that we need to get this done, and we're going to keep pushing into the next election cycle. I'll note that we're going to be wrapping soon, so we're going to try to get through as many questions as we can before our time tonight. I want to thank everybody who's on and has been on. We won't be able to get to everybody, but we will have an option that I believe Robin will go through at the end on if you had a question and weren't able to get it live, to find a way that our office gets it and we try to get back to you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Your next call comes from Lisa of Owings Mills. Lisa, you are live on the call with the Congressman. Please go ahead and ask your question, Lisa. Lisa, you are live on the call. Please go ahead and ask your question.
Thank you so much for taking my call. Hello. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yes.
Hi, yes. Thank you so much for taking my call. I work for the United States Department of Education. I'm a federal employee that's been employed for 34 years. I work in the Office of Civil Rights, and one of my main jobs is to provide transparency under FOIA and privacy. Due to a training that I attended, I was then placed on what they call paid administrative leave. As of right now, they have not said anything to us. We don't know if we're coming or going. Our jobs are in limbo. Is there anything that could be done in regards to that? Thank you so much for taking my call.
Well, thank you for a lifetime of dedicated service to our country and to our children. I don't know the specifics of your case, but I'd encourage you to reach out to our office so that we can try to assist you to work through that. But unfortunately, we're learning these are far too common stories and experiences. It's unconscionable to me that we are allowing an administration to go after Americans who are serving Americans in this way. And so it's why it's so important that we are having these conversations, that we're convening in this space so that we can hear from each other, but also so that we can push back with every single tool that we have to get back to a place where we're honoring the sacrifice and the work of people just like you. So I don't have a specific answer right now, but I promise you, if you reach out to our office, we will work with you and see what we can do to help in your particular case. As with anyone else on this call who may have a question or a concern, please reach out to us.
Thank you, Congressman. We've got a call from Chucks of Randallstown. Chucks, you're live on the call. Please go ahead and ask your question.
Hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yes, my question is why is it that each time Republicans mesh the economy, Democrat is always the one to restore it back every time? Every time it's always like that. So is it not time for Democrats to just sit and watch and see how far Republicans can go with what they are doing? Trump is not new. Before he came into his second term, we all knew what he did and what he said he's going to do. And yet, 7 swing states voted for him. That's why Democrats lost the White House. So my question to my 2 representative congressmen, can we Democrats just find something else doing, like making sure that the safety net that the over 45 million Americans are depending on, which is SNAP, TANF, and other programs to keep families together, and then allow the other policies that Republicans trying to do away, let them push and then see how far they can go. Because nothing is new. Everything we knew about it before the election last year. So why is Democrats making all this, spending all this time, having a town hall, organizing a protest and other things when they are supposed to just take out some important aspect of the policies and then defend it and allow Republicans to crash the economy, and then all those who from the 7 swing states that voted for Republicans for all the whole house, the 2 houses and the White House, including the Supreme Court as well. So there is no guardrail right now. Let them go ahead and do what they want to do, and then 2026, then we can see if we can be able to ravish at least 1 or 2 of the houses. So that is the Democrats should just not push too much, because each time it is always Democrats that comes to rescue when Republicans know exactly what they are doing. Imagine the people that he voted and that he appointed to lead in the secretaries. It was only Mitch McConnell that voted against RFK for Secretary of Health and Human Services.
Congressman, did you want to address the call?
Yeah, no, I know we're getting close to time for our time tonight, but I think it's important as elected leaders that we do push back and do so respectfully and try to find a way forcefully to say we have to make progress. And so I think as I have an obligation as a representative to stand for something, which is why we're counting the days where there hasn't been action to lower costs. And in fact, we've got a president who has proposed tariffs that both conservative and liberal economists have said would drive up the cost of goods and living for Americans across this country. There was legislation introduced today that would roll back, as Congressman Raskin was saying earlier, the limitation on overdraft fees. So instead of lowering costs, we're actually seeing a president and a Republican majority in the House that are increasing costs for American families. I think the more that we push back against these assaults on democratic institutions, and the more that we make that contrast about the fact that, as a Democrat, I'm willing to work with anyone, but I'm fighting for those kitchen table issues that mattered. And that's what was supposed to be driving the election, not this mass chaos, not attacking civil servants, not dismantling agencies outside of the rule of law and through the legal framework that's been well established for a long time in this country. We help frame that choice in future elections. And so I do think that what is happening is a direct result of one party rule. And I think that has to be recognized and that we have to amplify that. But I don't think it should be done by doing absolutely nothing. And I think being able to say for 2 years, we beat the drum, there was no action on lowering costs. For 2 years, we tried to rein in overreach to personal information, to going after civil servants. Because I think what we're seeing is that, at least to date, they don't care. Those in charge don't really care about the concerns. They're not hearing or don't care about. I think it's more they don't care about the stories that you all are sharing with us tonight and elsewhere. And so all I want to say, though, is that I'm going to keep fighting as long as I'm in this role, because I think we have an obligation to do what's right. And I have an obligation to do right by all of you on this call in this district. And, you know, some of the people impacted actually are Republicans, are independents, are unaffiliated. Don't vote. And I'm hoping that we can change that, because the only way that we can change this is if we all come together collectively and say it's not acceptable.
Thank you, Congressman. We are out of time, folks. I want to, before we close the call, Congressman, would you like to share some closing thoughts or closing remarks with your listeners this evening?
Sure. I know we've had thousands of you tonight join, so thank you so much for participating in this inaugural virtual and phone town hall. I want to again thank you, Robin, and our special guests, Congressman Jamie Raskin and Megan Uzzell from Democracy Forward. Again, I'll just reiterate, as your congressman, I believe in accountability, transparency, and communication. So we want to continue to offer varying and frequent ways to stay connected with me throughout my term. So with that in mind, if you would press *6, you'll be subscribed to our newsletter for what's happening in Washington and the district. But really just want to thank you so much for being part of this tonight. And Robin, we'll toss it back to you.
Thank you so much, Congressman. My pleasure to help out on the call this evening. Folks, I want to thank you for joining tonight's telephone town hall with Congressman Johnny Olszewski. If you would like to stay up to date on the Congressman's work, please follow him on X and Blue Sky at Rep Johnny O. And if you'd like to subscribe to the Congressman's e-newsletter, please stay on the line and leave your name and email address after the tone. Thank you so much for joining the call this evening. Have a blessed evening. Good night, everyone.